John Miller, thanks so much. And joining us now here in studio, Republican Senator from Montana, Tim Sheehy. He's a retired Navy SEAL. He graduated from the Naval Academy. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. So I'm really interested in your perspective as a veteran, what you think of members of the military, whether National Guard or those 700 Marines, being used in this way. That's obviously not why most people join the military, to be doing perimeter operations for ICE agents in major American cities.
Well, as John Miller just said, he pointed out, that there's going to have a lot of lawyers looking at this to ensure the legalese is being followed appropriately. I'm confident that it is, but let's invert the situation. So I was involved in a number of operations overseas, Iraq, Afghanistan. There'd be many operations we would have U.S. law enforcement attached to military units.
FBI.
Yep, in Iraq and Afghanistan, so that when we were capturing certain terrorist leadership positions, sometimes we didn't want them necessarily to go into the military detention process. We wanted them to be prosecutable should we have prosecutable evidence. So the history of law enforcement and the military working together and exchanging information and using, as you heard the general refer to, Title X authorities, this isn't the first time it's been. In fact, as you know, the National Guard has been deployed many times throughout American history. So protecting our federal personnel on the ground, protecting federal facilities is well within the legal writ of the National Guard, and it's well within the President and the Secretary of Defense's authority to do so. Now, I think in this scenario, though, the outrage over sending 700 Marines and 4,000 Guardsmen to protect a city that has been undergoing tremendous unrest, where was the equivalent outrage when 10, 15, 20 million, we don't even know how many illegal immigrants were allowed into this country en masse over the last 4 years? There wasn't an equivalent pearl clutching from the Democrats and legal think tanks questioning the constitutionality of completely opening the border unfettered and letting all those folks in. So, solving that problem and digesting millions and millions of undocumented immigrants who are here illegally is going to be a challenge. There's no question about that. There's no easy, clean way to do this. But let's be clear, this problem was created over the last 4 years, and this administration is trying to solve it.
Well, you could argue that the problem's been created over the last several decades because there hasn't been an update of our immigration laws in accordance with where we are as a nation since 1987, really. And I'll get to that in a second. But just as a member of the military, do you have, just as a personal level, do you not have any ambivalence or misgivings about the U.S. military being, I'm not saying it's illegal. I'm not saying that there's no authority to do this, but just, seeing that National Guardsmen with holding an M4 while ICE agents arrest somebody for who knows what, does that not bother you at all?
Yeah, listen, every single one of those troops you see on camera, regardless of what color the camouflage uniform is, they've sworn oath to the Constitution of the United States. And in war, whether you're deployed to Iraq, Afghanistan, Africa, whether you're deployed to a contingency operation in a non-war zone like peacekeeping, or whether you're deployed domestically, you have to make incredibly hard decisions. I think often about those Marines at Abbey Gate at Kabul Airport.
Yeah.
While I was trying to evacuate interpreters and get friends of mine, the citizens, out of the country. And those 19-year-old Marines on that wall literally had to decide, which babies am I going to grab and pull up over the wall and save, and who am I going to leave down there to die? Because those are the decisions, unfortunately, that you have to make when you are sworn in as a member of our military. You are trained and empowered to make life and death decisions. They're not easy decisions. They never are. And I can promise you those troops are in a challenging spot, no question. But, they also know when they're given constitutional legal orders to carry them out and do it to the best of their ability.
The Wall Street Journal reports that the White House and the Department of Homeland Security are frustrated by the lower-than-hope deportation numbers. And they've pushed to, in Stephen Miller's words, Stephen Miller, the top White House aide, just go out there and arrest illegal aliens. Republican Congressman Tony Gonzalez was on the show yesterday. He said, if you're going down where you're just picking up everyone who's here illegally, one, that takes you away from tackling the biggest problem in our country, which in my eyes is the convicted criminal that makes us all unsafe. There was another Republican, David Valadao from California, who said something similar. Let's focus on the criminals. Other people who are not hardened criminals are being picked up. I'm sure you see the stories all over the country. There was a raid there are a lot of undocumented people who are doing work in factories, and yes, they should not be there employed, et cetera. But some of these ICE raids are not of violent criminals. Do you think the priority should be the violent criminals?
It absolutely should be, and quite frankly, I think it has been. There's no easy way to have a dragnet and catch only the fish you want. The reality is, when you're targeting a high-value fish, oftentimes you're going to catch others that are not necessarily in that core group, but still fall within the rubric of people that you want to be deported. Obviously, the American people spoke very loudly last year that this was one of the top issues of this election, and frankly, of the last two elections also, that the illegal immigration issue was hugely important. And I think the legal forensics that go on when we talk about trying to address these issues now are oftentimes not equated with legal forensics on the other side, where we say, well, we're so worried about the rights of illegal immigrants who chose to come here illegally. I don't disagree. Our immigration code is outdated 100%. We need to revisit how we welcome people to this country legally. That's a huge problem. But these people chose to come here illegally, and some of them maybe to make a better life, for sure. Most of them probably. Some of them didn't. Some of them came here to kill, to deal drugs. But there hasn't been the focus on how were the constitutional rights of Laken Riley and Rachel Marin and Jacqueline Nungare, who were murdered ruthlessly and dumped on the side of the road like trash. Why aren't we talking about how their rights were depraved from them and their families? So I think this is a moment of reckoning now, because the president's promises are being carried out. And the nation's watching, and I think most of the nation, roughly 60% of Americans, are saying we want deportations to continue. We want this to happen. This is what we voted for.
So lastly, before you go, we've heard some expressions of reservation from some of your Republican Senate colleagues, Kennedy and Rand Paul specifically, about this military parade that's taking place on Saturday in honor, purportedly, of the Army's 250th anniversary, although it also, we should note, coincides with President Trump's birthday. I know you're a Navy guy, but it's going to cost at least $45 million, probably more. What do you think of it?
Well, I think that means the Navy has to have a $45 million parade, too.
Well, that's the fear. And then the Coast Guard gets one, and the Air Force gets one.
Go Navy, beat Army, right?
But what about, all these DOGE cuts and, the need to, reduce our deficit and everything? Isn't this unnecessary?
Well, listen, I mean, the Army's going to decide how they want to celebrate the 250th birthday of the greatest Army the world's ever known. And I think it's appropriate to honor that service for, frankly, just concluding our nation's longest war. The forensic financial analysis of our budget, when we were sending $45 million a week to the Taliban, there was not near as much outrage and pearl clutching from my Democrat colleagues when we were sending that amount of week, every single week, that amount of money to the Taliban. But now that we're going to celebrate our nation's 250th anniversary for our Army, I think it's appropriate, and obviously we want to honor our troops, and it's going to be a great day.
Just for the record, I was quoting the pearl clutching of Rand Paul and John Kennedy, Republicans, but I appreciate what you're saying. Republican Senator Tim Sheehy of the great state of Montana, thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate it. We're continuing to follow the news out of Los Angeles.